Welcome back to Talkin Shop with ShopSabre. Obviously, this is the podcast where we dive into everything related to business. We're going to talk about ownership, manufacturing, building with precision. Today's episode, it's going to be all about tooling. The little things that make a big difference. A lot of times, the right bit can make all the world in how your machine runs and where you go. As always, I'm your host, Brandon Bombardo, here with the second best Nick in the room, Nick Peters.
Whoa.
And we have a special guest today. Our special guest here is going to be Nick Frost from Frost CNC Tooling. So, very recognizable name. Nick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon.
We appreciate you swinging down.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, we're excited. We're going to talk about things that are way more complex than people realize. I think a lot of times people think all bits are created equal.
It seems simple on the surface, but it gets very deep.
Yeah, and that's why I love having you here, is you know a lot more about this. You're probably one of the smartest people I know when it comes to this stuff. And
well, thank you.
It's going to be kind of cool because even in the little conversation we were having just before the show off air, you already educated me. And I was like, man, I've been doing this a long time and I just learned something in the first 5 minutes. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. But today we're going to talk about tooling, sometimes a little bit about speeds, feeds, and then just choosing the right bits. And Nick's going to try to learn something today so we can share it with our customers, right?
You're right. I'm going to just be on a fly on a wall and take it all in.
There, take it all in. Did you bring a notebook so you can take notes?
No, I got a brain right here.
They're mental notes.
Cool. Well, you brought your favorite shirt, so that makes me excited. Yeah, I like that shirt.
Some people call me Barney when I wear this shirt.
I like it. But yeah, I know before we jump in, everybody's excited to talk to Nick, but let's, I know we got some questions and comments that actually, I think you said are going to relate to having Nick on the show today, so.
Yeah, we tried to pick some that were topic relevant today.
Yeah,
so
I like it.
Here we go. Number one, when considering speeds and feeds, why are you not just programming at maximum all the time?
It's a good question, but I think, feed rates are only a small part of the equation. Geometry is also something you have to take into consideration. So just because a bit can go 800 inches a minute doesn't mean you should. Sometimes it just doesn't, work. You're going to be, for one, breaking bits because sometimes the hardness of your material, how thick you're taking, there's just situation where, your starts, your stops, your slopes, your lead-ins, all of that plays into the performance of that tool. And that's something that Nick and I were actually talking about, is that sometimes you have the right tool and they just have it programmed wrong, and then they're going too fast or going too slow and they're just burning bits out and they can't figure out why the tool doesn't last or why their edge finish isn't right. And, I think of it kind of like a race car. Race cars are really great, but they can't go full speed in the corner. They still got to slow down. And it's just a big part of maximum performance, making sure that you're set up for the work you're doing, because sometimes just different types of materials in general will affect the way a tool can really perform. Do you agree with that, Nick?
I do. And I think even just the caveat of the question, like, why don't we max everything out? One of the big things I think people need to realize is, like, let's say you're running 600 inches a minute and, you call us or we say, you can actually get to 700, 750 if you want to. The reality is on a typical cabinet nest, that might get you 10 seconds of time.
Right.
It's not like you're gaining minutes per sheet process by running 100 inches a minute faster or something. Right. And so, you're putting more impetus on your part hold down, your tooling, the machine performance to gain 10 seconds.
Right.
And so more often than not, and we get into this too when we talk about 2 fluids versus 3 fluids, which I'm sure we'll get to later and stuff, like speed isn't everything. It's fun to talk about.
Right?
It's fun to say, hey, we ran 1,000 inches a minute. But in reality, most shops, whether they're ShopSabre runners or not, should be running 2 fluid tooling, 600, 700 inches a minute, rock and roll all day long. Right? When you try and push past that, yes, it's doable, but it's just very diminishing returns, really, to do that.
Yeah, you add a lot more risk with not a big reward.
And let's say you lose one more part every 12 sheets.
Right.
Well, what was the point of gaining 10 seconds back on those 12 sheets to run 100 inches a minute faster, right? You just cost yourself money in a replacement part trying to do it. So. And
probably time, because replacement parts come at a cost. And
from time
so now suddenly your 10 seconds cost you 3 minutes, So it's like, it's that's a huge part of it. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question for that viewer. So
question number 2.
Yeah.
Does a cheap tool out of China really cut any worse than a Vortex or Frost tool?
The answer is simply yes. I know people are going to argue on this, and this is where the internet gets messy because everybody's entitled to an opinion, and I appreciate that. But the reality of it is scientifically backed. Yes, tooling quality is determined by is going to determine ultimately the performance. sometimes you might see a similar result, on a small scale. But as when you look at sampling sizes that Nick, you look at and I look at, I mean, we've been doing this a long time. And the vast majority of performance differences comes from tooling quality. And, a big part of that is, and again, this is something that I think we should jump into it now because you talked about it before the show. And this is one of those areas
this is a perfect segue.
I was going to say, this is actually that when I said I learned something today, I've been doing this most of my adult life. Fortunately, my dad kind of, drugged me into this world. But something no tooling manufacturer has ever said to me is what you told me today. So I'm going to let you take over and explain this.
Yeah. So for those watching on video, what I've got in front of me are 3 carbide blanks, basically blanks for every 2 manufacturer. They come in, pre-cut to length, pre-chamfered, and basically we can put them in our robotic loading and off we go and manufacture. But the reason I brought these 3 is they appear to be very identical, right? If we were to make the same tool out of these 3, they would look the same. On the first sheet you cut with, they would probably perform the same. But the difference between these 3 is these are actually very different hardnesses of the carbide itself. And so the first one here is what's called 10% cobalt carbide. It's the softest. And that is what import tooling is coming in at, right? It's the cheapest. It's the easiest to manufacture, grinds like butter from a tooling perspective. And so this is the most common kind of more inexpensive commodity tool in the market, this 10% grade.
There's your Amazon tool, essentially.
Yep, there's our Amazon tool, right?
Got it.
In the middle here, we have what's called 6% cobalt carbide. And this is a step up and in some cases can be called a little higher performing, we'll say. And so you see this in the market somewhat. Because it's harder, that's where you see the extended lifespan. Now you're going from 40 sheets of plywood, let's say, on this commodity 10% tool. Now we're getting 100, right? And yes, this blank costs a little bit more, but they still grind like butter. They're relatively easy to produce, but we just don't see import tooling come in with this grade, right? This is very much a North American or European thing.
Gotcha.
And then when we step up one step further, we get to the hardest available blank here in North America. Every tooling company has access to this 3% cobalt carbide, and it is incredibly hard. And that's where we see users report 200, 300. We have people say 400 sheets, 500. It's like, it's too much, to be honest. Like, I'd love to see the edge at 5. Well, I'd love to see the edge at 500 sheets, right? It's like, but that's really where it comes from. Now, we'll get into our coding and all of the things that extend the life even further. But when you talk about tool life and the difference between a cheap Amazon tool and like you mentioned, a Vortex XP or ours, it's the grade of carbide. It's the hardness. There's a tangible difference. This is a much more expensive blank. It takes a lot longer to grind and produce this tool. It does not grind like butter like these ones do. And so that is the biggest indicator to tooling life and tooling performance. These edges stay sharp longer. Material's just harder. It stands up to abrasive material better. And so is there a difference? Yes. And there is the exact reason why there is a difference in high performing tooling.
Yeah, and that's awesome because the one thing that, we're going to kind of get longer on this answer is because the thing that you don't realize, and I think this is where people don't realize it sometimes, is that when they say, oh, my Amazon tool got as long of a life as my blank, right? I'm not going to say a name, like anybody. It may be simply because the level of whoever the other person was the same carbide. So of course it lasted the same because they're same level. But as you move up in quality of tool within the manufacturer even, because there are good, better, best in a lot of manufacturers. And if you buy the top of the line versus an Amazon, you're going to notice a difference.
And to your point, when you see a good, better, best model, right, this is typically what it is, right? It's good, better, and best. And it's just simply a hardness modulation up the scale. And so it can be some tweaks to geometry, true, but it's mostly just a carbide blank issue.
So there you go. That answers that.
So all those things said made me have a question pop into my mind. So when you said the first one was 100 sheets or 10 sheets?
I just use 40. I just use 40.
Okay, so let's just say, for example, that one gets 40 and the top of the line gets 400, which is 10 times more, right? Is the cost from the bottom to the top 10 times more?
To us, and I can only speak to us, no, right? So we actually made the tangible decision as a company to not even offer 10 or 6. Right? We just said we are going to offer the best, most high-performing tool on the market. We're not going to get into the good, better, best. And so we chose to be basically direct only and offer this 3% tool at you know, at incredibly low cost, and we don't even deal with.
And I only ask that because we've talked on previous episodes of like making smart investments.
Right.
So like if you're paying only 3 times more for the top of the line tool and you're getting 10 times more output,
right,
it makes more sense to
yeah,
spend
yeah,
the
with
money,
ours,
right?
you're basically paying the same, like just because of the model that we've chosen, where this, like, we're going to mass produce the high performing tool, we're going to keep our costs low, we're going to be direct only, and so you're basically doing that for what other tools would normally
So it definitely
cost,
proves the
nice.
point that if you do a little bit of research and
absolutely,
put your money in the right
now,
place.
Now, I will say, you know, all of this sounds good. Like, all of this says, oh, why would I ever use a tool that's 10 or 6%? There is one slight downside to using carbide like this, and I'm sure you see this, is it is slightly more brittle, right? So as the carbide gets harder and harder, it does start to get more and more brittle. Now, in situations with good tool holding, good part hold down, nice rigid machines run at the right RPM and feed rate, there are no issues.
right.
But if you've got one of those variables out of whack, this 3% tool is going to fail faster than this 10% tool.
Right.
And so, you know, when I hear people say, well, I didn't see that much of a difference between this and this, and I know that there's a difference here, my first question is, okay, what other variable isn't dialed in, right? Is this a hold down issue? Is it an RPM or a feed rate issue? And so you just have to know that about using high performing tooling. You got to do everything right. And that's where you see your 300 and 350 sheet like maxed out on a $78 tool. I mean, it's just crazy. You got to do everything right.
Yeah. I mean, I always explain that in a car terms. That's my thing, right? And I tell people, like, it's like wearing out your tires on your car. You can buy the greatest tires in the world, but if your alignment's off on your car, you're going to wear those tires out fast. And it's the same thing with your CNC machine. If you got something out of whack, it doesn't matter the quality of tool you buy, you're going to have a problem. So you got to start there first. Make sure you got all the other stuff figured out. So,
all right. That was great.
Yeah.
I actually learned a lot in that one little question. Number 3, when selecting a tool, how do I determine the right length of bit?
Yeah, this is actually a really great question, because the rule of thumb is the cutting length, or the flute length as they refer to it as, should only be as long as you need to cut through your material. A lot of times people, and I see this often, they just want to buy the longest bit they can and they figure they'll just use as much of it as they need to, right? But the problem with that mentality is that long bits, unless necessary, right, thickness of materials, they're weaker generally because you've now created leverage, right? And we talked about that. As the longer the tool, the more vibration you get into the tooling. And to your point, the brittleness of the tool, becomes more apparent because now you are putting more load, and that can result in chatter and deflection. And that translates into the machine, which people don't realize that even though these are heavy, very strong machines, you're putting a lot of load on those tools. Absolutely. And that on a pendulum, right, to extend it out further, puts a lot more load into your machine, and then effectively can create other issues within your CNC machine. I'm just talking from a CNC manufacturer standpoint that, your bearings are going to take the abuse, your spindle takes the abuse, other things take the abuse because you simply put too long of a tool in there for what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback on that. You're absolutely right. What I brought here is basically 2 half-inch compressions. You can see a 4-inch that has an 1 5/8 cutting length, right? For people doing 1.5 tabletops or whatever. And then this one is our mortise compression, and it's only a 7/8 cut length, and it's only 3 inches long. This is the cabinet guys right here, right? Short, rigid. It affects cut quality. It affects the life of the tool. If the tool is chattering a little bit, the lifespan just dives, right? It needs to be running rigid. So you may not see an outright failure if your tool's too long per se, but you're nowhere near seeing the max life that the tool could do. And so we do get that from time to time. It'll say, hey, we occasionally cut 1.25 inches for laminate countertops, whatever. Can I just run an 1.5-inch cutting length tool all the time? And I said, well, what do you cut most often? Oh, like 90% 3/4 white melamine. No, right? Have 2 different cutout tools. It is so worth your time to just set that up in your cabinet software and just set it and forget it. You're going to get the max life out of both tools. You're not going to wear out a more expensive long tool. Cutting 3/4 material. And so we always try to match that. We usually go about 1/8 of an inch over the thickness of the material, right? So if you're cutting 3/4 all day, a 7/8 cut length tool, you'll see is very common from many tool suppliers for that reason. And that's what we do as well.
And again, it just goes back to the right tool for every job. It's largely like, I think back to the day, like when we started this business so many years ago, tool changers at 5 positions was like the answer. Like, oh my God, I get 5 tools. 5 doesn't get you anything nowadays. Like now
with MDF doors and all the things people are doing, absolutely.
And that's why we have such, and I get people like, who've had CNC machines for a while, like, I don't understand why I need 15 tools. And I'm like, trust me, like if you start dialing this in, you'll use up 15. Like you will. And, especially when you get into MDF doors. And as you said, like this is a perfect example. 2 tools for essentially the same material, just depending on the thickness that you're working with. And it's quick that you can end up having 2 or 3 of similar tools in your tool library, but you may only use one once a week because you, like, to your point, we do very little of this, but we do it. Well, have a tool for that so you can be set up.
It's worth it just to have it set up. And
I got all your questions this week, right?
Yep.
I think you said 3, and that was 3.
That was
I
3.
Count.
3 really, really good answers.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions. That was really good. You brought some really good questions this week. So
that's right.
Hopefully, those of you listening and watching, you learned something just like we did. And if you haven't watched the video, if you're just listening, I encourage you, go watch the video, because what Nick actually showed there on video is pretty impressive. It actually puts it in perspective. And I'm a big believer on just show and tell and bringing in what he did to show you like visually the differences. It's pretty remarkable. And, before we jump further into, because I think you and I could sit here all day and talk tooling, but let's talk about what Frost CNC tooling is or why it exists. And, let's let them get to know you a little bit, right? Sure. Because I know you, Nick, you and I we've worked together for many years. And I think a lot of people, they don't. I think there's a lot of people that do know you and they think, hey, we know the backstory of Nick and where he came from. But there's a lot of people that are like, no idea who this guy is. And suddenly, boom, blast into the scene with these tools and everybody's talking about him. Why? So
I'll give you kind of the full backstory. It's kind of unique. So prior to getting into the cabinet industry and ultimately the tooling industry, I was actually a chemistry professor at the University of Minnesota. So I spent my 20s getting a PhD in analytical chemistry and started teaching introductory analytical chemistry courses there. And I love science, but I just didn't end up loving that job as much as I thought I would. Right. 150 20-year-olds in the course, like there's a lot of challenges. Let's just say that. So, and so during that time, my wife and I bought a house, and I had started doing some, my own remodeling casework and stuff, and it just kind of grew like wildfire. Friends and family building cabinetry, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a leap. I'm just going to start a cabinet company. I'm going to go from teaching analytical chemistry to building boxes out of plywood. Everyone thought I was insane. My family thought I was insane. I remember the Thanksgiving that we told everybody, and I could just see the look on their face. It's like, you're going to do what? And so that was probably 2016, 2017, somewhere in that range. And so then, built up a small cabinet shop, ended up buying a ShopSabre IS 510. Those were what, 2017, 2018?
2017, 2018, yep.
And, built up a small business, ended up having 3 or 4 people. And I loved the software side.
Right.
Like we use Mosaic cabinet software.
Admittedly, you're one of the most talented guys I'd ever met with Mosaic.
Well,
like it was,
thank you.
It was pretty impressive. Back then, Mosaic was very new. So let me be clear about this. It was a new product. Not a lot of people knew a lot. And it's like, here comes Nick, like full into it. Again, analytical. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to be the best at it.
And that's where it came from, right? Like the science and math background.
Right.
Like, and actually coding was part of getting my PhD. So like all of the software side, the stuff that a lot of your users and my users struggle with, right? They're not tech guys.
Right.
They're wood guys who, realize they're going to get into this to better their business.
Right.
But they're not good on the tech side.
Right.
And I was the opposite, right? I was tech first and wood second. And so it allowed me to really push, CNC machining between, VCAR Pro and Mosaic. And we did tons of cool stuff. But what ended up happening is I loved that, and I didn't love the scheduling and the HR and all of the stuff that goes with running a custom cabinet business and installs and stuff.
Wait a second. You don't like this kind of like, hey, the analytics?
I didn't love that part.
Yeah, weird. Administrative work was not fun.
No. And so in 2020, I basically made the decision to sell my machines and to start helping people with Mosaic software independently from Mosaic. And so that really ramped up in about March of 21, and it exploded like wildfire. I found a niche that I just didn't really realize how big it could have been. And a lot of people getting into machines for the first time and just like really stuck and not know kind of, how to make this cabinet software talk to this machine. And how do I take my construction methods? How do I make this all work?
Right.
I kind of injected myself right in the middle there, and ended up helping thousands of people over a 2-year span, whether it was online or in person or in Facebook groups or whatever. And so that's where we really built up a lot of people who knew we could help or knew I could help.
Yeah.
And so in the end of 2022, I met who is now my partner in this tooling venture, and I kind of learned more about tooling. I was around it all the time.
Right.
I was helping people dial it in, so I kind of knew how to run tooling right, but I didn't know a lot of the things like I've already mentioned here today. I didn't know the inside of it all. And so then I'm hearing this, and I'm like, man, we could do tooling different. Like, are you interested in like trying to blow this up and like have a tooling company that is direct only with no distributorship, like you guys. Like I want to deal with our customers. I want to talk to our customers. I want to be solely responsible for their success. Right. And cut a bunch of money out of the tooling game that's in there sometimes. And so that's what we did. And so I tested this tooling. We built this line for about 3 or 4 months. And the results that we got back, even from some very big production facilities, like we're seeing like double tool life. Yeah. I was like, holy crap. I think we might have this might be because that was the thing. I said, the one thing we could do if we're going to launch a new tooling company is because of the success we'd had in consulting is they can't suck. Yeah. They have to be like legitimately top tier or we're not doing this. Right. And once they were, and once we started to get that feedback and we had everything in place, I knew we had a winner. So we launched in March of 2023. So we're almost 2.5 years old with our tooling company. Yeah. And it's been amazing. Thanks to you guys, obviously helping us get some kits out in the world and helping to raise awareness. Like, this business was built almost exclusively on social media. Right. That's what allowed us to reach people really quickly, and we're really fortunate for that. So.
Yeah, no, it's been an impressive story, and that's why I love that. Like, I wanted to talk about that because I knew a vast majority of what you just shared, and I'm like, the vast majority, even people who know you, don't know that. Not all and I'm details, like, I'm like, people don't realize that like the educational side of you comes from your past career. You enjoyed the teaching people and educating them on the now tooling, right? I mean, at the time it was software and now it's tooling. And it's just like your ability to take something and go, hey, how can we make it better? And it's kind of the ShopSabre mentality as well. Like people build CNC machines from all over the world and we're like, how can we do it the best? Like we're not going to be the most expensive machine. We're not going to be the cheapest machine. We want to just be in our own niche market and do it the best we can for that price point. Yep. And
be solely responsible for your customers' success or failures, right? They call you, it is you. and I just love, like, that's the thing about distributorship. I understand why it exists, right? There's a lot of benefits of it. But that's the one thing that always bothered me is like the success of what I've poured my life into is in someone else's hands right now.
100%.
It's hard to let go. Yeah. So we chose to keep as much of that in-house as we
And I love that about it because we align with partners that have that philosophy, right? We don't want somebody who can just shift the blame, right? Oh, well, we don't know. We'll have to call. Like, no, I want to be able to call you up and say, hey, this didn't work. What do I got to do differently? And that kind of leads me into my next section of just talking and understanding about the right tooling for the job and why it matters, because we alluded to that at the beginning of this entire podcast that, ShopSabre's discussion on tooling has always been, it's a necessary part of your machine, right? It's like wheels for your car. You're not going anywhere without it, so you have to have some sort of tooling. And there are tons of different manufacturers. I mean, it seems like every month there's a new manufacturer that I run into, and that's okay. It's okay to have other selections, and that's okay if you choose to go with your buddy who sells tooling. But for us, we try to make a conscious recommendation on tooling that is proven. And specifically for us, having partners that understand what they do and why they do it, not just, hey, I bring in parts from China and stick my name on it, and now you can buy a tool from me, because the reality is, and I try to explain that to people, like, I could do that even. I mean, there's so many privately labeled tools out there
100%.
that you buy them from certain manufacturers, and
you
they're
can
the same
find
tool
one online within 10 minutes,
right?
And have somebody on the phone talking about a private label tool.
Right, exactly. And we get approached all the time. They're like, oh, you sell so many machines, you should private label your own tooling. Yep. And the concern that I have with that is, I'm private labeling my own problems.
It is
like these tools aren't built any different. I mean, there's 10 people out there selling the same tool. Yep. And now you're going to buy my tool and expect it to perform differently. But it's the same tool, it's just my name on it. And so that's where I kind of go back to is we're really good at building CNC machines and really good at supporting our customers. You're really good at building tooling. I don't need to be in that market.
And it's the support and it's the education, right? It is building what we consider the best tool on the market is very little of the battle, right? It is this, I think I said this before we started, but I feel like I'm in an education business, because we can have, the best tool, whatever. There are 9 other variables that are in the user's hands to whether or not they actually perform well. RPMs, feed rates, part hold down, tool holding, are your collets 10 years old, like all of the things. And a lot of that, until the customer is educated, comes back to us, right? We tried your tool, it broke, or we only saw 20, whatever. And then it's like, okay, well, let's talk through all those other variables, and you kind of find the one that was the culprit, teach about that moment, and ultimately, I'm glad that we have a big social media presence, because a lot of that plays out in public, right? And so, there can be 1,000 people that read that comment, and so they can see, oh, you know what? I haven't changed my collets in 5 years either, so maybe I should do that too. So
and that's the hardest thing. You and I talked about this before. Is that like some of the most difficult customers to work with, right? We let's touch on that. It's not the mom and pop shops. Believe it or not, like they're actually the ones that are the easiest, because they're directly involved from the top down. Like the passion of what they do, they want to understand it.
That's right.
It's when you get into like the corporate world and you're dealing with 5 levels removed, and the person making the decisions has no real connection with,
and no skin in the game.
Like they don't really care. So they're going to buy the cheapest tool they can, or they're going to run the tool wrong. And when they wear it out, so be it. But then the people buying the tools are footing the bill, are going, why does this tool not work? And then they're the ones all mad. And it's like, well, let's go back to the operator and talk about why things aren't working. And it's really hard sometimes to change old habits.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's something that when I started I assumed that the larger the company, the more they had their stuff figured out.
Correct.
Right? And it's very much any machine people, anybody will say it's very much the opposite. Right. And it's and I think it's what you said. It's like the people making those decisions, they're not the owner. Right. They're it's harder to kind of pierce that veil and get in and be able to educate and say why you're seeing what you're seeing. And there's a lot of stuck in your ways, right? Well, that's how the guy before me did it. And so 20 years later, you got a string of, well, that's how the guy before me did it. And
and I think that comes back to, as we talk about speeds and feeds, let's talk about that a second. Because, a lot of times there are operators that inherit a machine, right? They get hired onto a job, as you said. There's a guy before them, and they got hired on for second shift, and gets taught how to do it by the first guy. Now the first guy leaves, so he moves up, and they hire another one. And by the time you get it, you're 3rd generation removed, right? And well, why do you run those feeds and speeds? Well, just how we do it.
That's the way we set up.
And it's, let's talk about RPM for a second, because how does it pertain to tooling life, Nick? Like explain the correlation to RPM.
So ultimately, that starts with a term called chip load, and I'll just kind of make a mention of it now. Basically what that term means is it's kind of getting at like how big of cut should we be taking with every flute, right? With every rotation, how much material should we be engaging? And there's kind of a nice range there for every style of tool that you want to be in with that number. And what it then relates to is how fast does the tool need to spin, and how fast do we need to run that tool in feed rate to achieve that little chip, right? And so you kind of work backwards then and say, okay, if I run this at this RPM and this feed rate, I'll achieve this kind of optimal, grab essentially. And so a lot of successful users don't know what chip load is, but they understand the correlation to RPM and feed rate. And that's what we've done with the calculator that we have on our website, is that you won't see the word chip load there. It's really just pick your tool, pick the material. Here's an RPM slider bar, here's a range, and then here's a feed rate. And, and basically what it's all coming back to is we're trying to achieve that chip load for you without really getting into the
taking out the analytical side.
Taking out the math part and just like, here you go. And so to answer your original question about RPMs is, typically with 3/8 tooling and under, you'll very commonly see something like 18,000 RPMs. And the reason you don't see much faster, even though spindles can go to 24,000, right, is so much heat gets generated when a tool is spinning that fast if the tool can't constantly be moving.
Right.
Well, when we're cutting cabinet nests or anything else, there's a lot of starting and stopping, right? Even with a machine that moves very fluidly, you have a lot of these small dwell times, right? And all that is an opportunity for a tool to spin, not engage in material, friction, heat, and overheat. And so what we found, and basically every tooling manufacturer in the world has found, is Most router tooling in wood sits somewhere between like 16 and 18K, sometimes up to 20 on really small tools, V-point tools, stuff like that. But and it's really just about heat management, not generating heat while we're not actively cutting, and still keeping feed rates, relatively swift. And so to answer your RPM question, that's why it's really heat mitigation. And then from a spindle perspective, and you can speak more to this, right? If you get below a certain range, we're losing torque too, right? So there's kind of this sweet spot there for spindle considerations and tooling considerations in that 14 to 18K range.
The easiest thing for me to explain that as is like, for those of you who have ever had to plow your driveway in the winter, if you just try to go into the snow full depth, just full swoop, it takes a lot more power to push that snow.
Sure does.
And it's the same thing with tooling. Like if you take full swoop, the torque matters now because you might have all the horsepower in the world, but if you can't get going, nothing matters. And you're just going to break the bit. You're going to cause a stall. Something's going to happen there. And that's why horsepower still matters in a spindle. But it also is why when people come to you, and we get it often, people are like, oh, I need a 36,000 RPM spindle. No. What are you doing? Like, first off, let's understand why you think you need that, because people just sometimes think RPM means speed, and it doesn't always mean speed, because there's a limitation to speed, and more RPM is actually more problems sometimes. So
almost always,
So it's like often, even though the spindle is like most spindles nowadays that we sell with a tool changer, they go to 24,000 RPM. It is rare that I'm like, you should turn it up to 24,000 every time. Like,
every once in a while, I'll see a user doing that, and it just haven't been educated yet, right? It's the more is better philosophy. Well, I should just ramp it up and buy more flutes on my tools, and more is better. And that's very much not the case in this.
And that's where breaking bits come from. Because I think a lot of times people think a broken tool is a tool failure. But in reality, broken bit is generally an indication of process failure.
100%.
And generally that is, you got the feed rate wrong, you got the RPM wrong, your chip load's wrong. One of those three things is off in most cases. Now, granted, yes, like anything, there's a unexpected failure in a part, right? It can happen.
I guess it's possible.
Right.
It's incredibly rare.
And that's what I want to say is like, it's pretty unique if you want to say the tool failed on its own. It failed because it came in contact with something it shouldn't have. And that does happen, believe it or not. Of
course it does.
Things in your material sometimes, and I've run into it recently. We had a guy cutting MDF doors, and he's doing the whole thing, and he's like, in this one spot, we got this weird thing, and you could see like swirls, and he just hit a glue ball inside his material, and it happens.
Oh, of course.
And it's like the first thing that happens is, what does glue do? It heats up really quick. Well, what happens to hot glue? It sticks to everything. So now it's on the cutting flutes, and now suddenly your tool goes to crap because you've essentially heated up those flutes and now covered them. And that leads to tooling breaking. It's not the tool broke. It was the glue it hit caused this, which caused that.
It makes me want to say this. I feel really, really strongly about this. Is I don't care what manufacturer of tooling is, as long as it's a known brand here in America. None of them make cheap tooling. None of them make tooling that's ready to fail on you. None of them. Right. And so if you try a brand and you have a failure, it is not the tool. It's not the tool. And I don't care if it's ours or anybody else's, right? And so we get that a lot is, we tried this and then we tried yours and they didn't break. And it's like, well, it's not like you didn't buy it. Like, it's not what it was, right?
Correct.
There was something about something else that caused
there was
that,
a variable.
Right? There's a variable in there. It's RPM and feed rate. It's your operator changed the collet between their tool and ours, and you didn't know that. Like, something about it,
vibration,
right?
something's different.
We'll take it. We'll help you, and hopefully you continue using our tooling. But I'm not just going to say, oh, yeah, well, ours won't break. Well, let's get to why that happened. And so for those listening, please just know, if you have a tool failure, it's really a process problem, right? You have to examine why that happened. And there are situations where, I mentioned our kind of extra hard carbide is there are a caliber of machine out there below a ShopSabre that just doesn't run extra hard carbide super well. There's some run out, there's some rigidity issues in the machine. There's just, you will see a failure earlier in high performing tooling like ours than you would be maybe on a cheaper tool. And so that does happen. I fully understand that. That's why I always ask people, what machine are you running? And, you have to diplomatically explain why this tooling may not be the best fit. We hope it is, and we're going to try and help you. But and we get a lot of underpowered spindles, right? If you just can't run fast enough, you also have a high performing tooling problem. They get hot really fast,
Yep.
and they fail. And so you either got to take 3 passes to get through 3/4 material with a 3-horse spindle, or and so that's another one, common one that comes up. But I'm glad you gave me the floor for that. I've wanted to say that very publicly for a long time. Is like, none of us are out here to do a bad job.
Absolutely.
None of us are out here to make a tool that fails.
We don't
right?
win in that. Like, that's the thing I
Nobody
try to
wins
explain
in
to
that.
customers is like, because I've heard, and I've heard it from customers, they're usually in a mood because they've just broke a bit.
Something happened.
And then the first thing they say is, well, you're okay with them breaking because then you sell more bits. No. I promise you, the last thing I've ever had a conversation about in any meeting at ShopSabre is what tool breaks the quickest so I can sell more of them. Like, it's just not, like, I don't want the tool to break.
No,
like,
it's not. And that was our philosophy too, is right. Like, you could, there are companies that will make the mid tier and the low tier and hope you're just okay with decent performance. And that's okay. That's fine. There's a model there. I understand.
Yep.
But when we go in and, we get somebody 2x, 3x, 4x the life, and the tools don't cost any different than what they were used to.
Right.
I have people in the industry tell me, man, you're leaving money on the table. Like, you should. And to me, that's not what it's about, right? Is I want the customer to have the best possible experience, and I want them to be sticky, right? I want them, like, we 4x'd, but I want to be your customer for the next 20 years.
Correct.
Right? There's no need for you to go looking for a different answer.
Right.
There's like, we have the perfect answer. And, and so that's been our philosophy from the beginning. And that's what it's all about.
Buy your second machine the first time came from is exactly that philosophy. Yeah, we've heard it too. Like, you could buy stuff, you could have a machine built by so-and-so and import it and you'd make more money. But and you're right. I probably could increase profits in some regards that way, but I probably lose profits because now it's a detriment to my, reputation and who we are. And it's the same thing you are. Like, I don't want to sell you one machine. I want, as you grow, I sell you 2, 3, 4 machines, not just the one time and like, we got his money once and then now they don't like us and they leave. Like, it's that same mentality with tooling manufacturers that
100%.
You want them to tell every friend that they have.
Especially in the social media world we live in, right? And it's helped our company and it helps you all the time is like, you want people who have had the best possible experience out there being vocal, being your biggest salespeople. And the only way you do that is if you make a splash. And actually in tooling, it's kind of hard to make a true splash. Right. There are a lot of good companies out there. And let's be honest, it's never priority one for a shop owner. Yeah. They're never like, today is like, I have to figure out. They have so many other things to think about. And as the shop grows in size, tooling is like number 50 on their list of things, right? It's kind of working, whatever. We'll just go with it. And so, and that's why another reason why we did the model we did is we needed to make a splash. Yep. We needed to make it splashy. We needed to change things by 2, 3x. Yep. And let it run. Yeah. So.
I mean, it makes sense. And, given the guidelines you just provided, I think this is a good place to plug it. But he mentioned his website. If you get time and you want to know, like, hey, am I running the wrong RPM? Am I running, like, you can go to his website. He's got a really great calculator out there. And it's a great opportunity for you just to see, like, how far off am I? And let me be clear here. Just because it says you can go the speed doesn't mean your equipment can't. I don't know what you're running, obviously, from an equipment standpoint. So we need to be careful there because...
And I should put a little disclaimer on our calculator, right? We're basically assuming a very conservative... well-built-ish, rigid-ish machine.
Right?
We're not assuming this is like a 30,000-pound machine. We're also not assuming it's a 1,000-pound machine, right? We're assuming you're kind of in there, and of course, with a calculator, we do the best we can, but we can't do it for every scenario. So,
and that's why I call
we give you a conservative. We give you a conservative starting point.
Yeah.
We have a lot of users who do push 10, 20, 30% more.
Yep.
And if someone really truly wants to dial in their tooling, and they are doing pretty high production, and they really want to do it, go until you break one. Honestly, bump it up 10%, watch your production for a day. Yep. The worst thing you're going to do is you're going to break a $70 tool and you're going to know, okay, this is the limit. Yep. Dial it back 5 or 10% and just live right there. Yep. And that's
actually honestly, why in our controller, now this is a great segue into that, is because in our controller, I often get people asking the question why we make it so you can just adjust your feed rate on the fly. Yep. And why wouldn't we just want to change it in our CAD program? This is why. Because
and test on the fly.
People don't realize that, like CNC machines aren't printers. You don't just hit go, forget about them, and walk away. Like, there's a tuning process when you get any new machine, new material, new tooling, whatever. And some of that is just learning. You have to push the limits. And it's I go back to racing again, as you guys all know on the show, I talk about it a lot. But when I go racing, I get to a new track, and I don't just assume that I know how to race the track. I go out for what they call hot laps or practice. and I try to spin the car out. I go as hard as I can until I spin out. And then I go, okay, now I know where the limit is and I have to dial it back. It's the same sort of thing that you have to be willing to do with your tooling. And yeah, sometimes it is breaking a bit, right? But if you're doing this for a living and you're doing this longevity wise, like to our point from a few weeks ago, Nick, we talked about Nick too. Sorry, I don't want to. But we talked about consumables and how people need to get control of their consumables and understand there is a cost with that, but getting it under control. And part of your consumable life is knowing how much you can get out of it and how fast you can go. And, I think this is a great opportunity to say that, because this leads right into that thought process that not every tool is the same, which means that when you try a new tool, your feed rate may change. The way you get a result from that tool may change. You might find that, hey, you know what? I can increase 25% and get the same results I was getting or better, just simply because the tooling is better, and my machine can take it. And it's like putting a restrictor plate on a race car, right? You can take a lot of speed off a race car by just simply taking some of the variable out of it. And
I think I'll mention too, to your earlier point about our calculator on our website, frostcnctooling.com, is what we see most often when you say people just go check, just go look, is almost exclusively across the board. If somebody's not running right, they're running too slow.
Right.
Right. You see it every day, right?
Find it all the time.
There's this, especially amongst first-time users, there's kind of this fear of like running too fast, and it already seems fast to them, right? Even at 400 inches a minute or whatever. Right. And so they kind of just sit there. And also, too, I will say, cabinet software generally has some default number,
right?
And a lot of times, no one ever just changes it, right? And they just like make G code and run. And so, I really encourage people to look, because my guess is if you're not seeing the lifespan that we're talking about today, out of ours or similar high-end tooling, like it's a feed rate problem, right? It's a spindle speed problem. It's a figure it out. Like look into your data, figure out what that is. And without knowing these specific situations, my guess is the feed rate's too slow.
Right.
Tools are getting molten hot and failing.
Yeah, the thing that I found in our world, because a lot of times, like, with our customers, we're either their first industrial machine, right? They're their first level of like really that next level of equipment. And so they've become accustomed to having to run slower because the machine couldn't take it. And the problem is now all your programs are pre-built, and then they step up to something like this and they just plug the same programs in. And then, it, like to your point, I'll see videos of people posting it. And they're like, oh, we're cutting today. And I don't want to seem like the jerk that's like, you need to go faster, but like I watch the video and I'm like, it looks like it's just not moving, but they're excited, and I'm like, it's cool, but you could do so much more. And then, my favorite is when people call me, oh, I don't need to go that fast though. Like the machine's already fast enough. I'm like, yeah, but the machine sitting idle longer doesn't hurt you. No. But it is hurting you that the tooling life isn't going to be there. The material quality, you might get a better edge finish by going faster. So it's like some of that is what really matters to me.
And not to mention on the very extreme of slowness, the fire risk, right? Like when tools get that hot, that's not a good thing. Right.
Yeah. And weird heat in wood.
Yeah. Well, especially with vacuum underneath, you're pulling fresh air. Like you've seen spoil blood fires, right? They are gnarly and
they're not fun.
No.
And that's another good point that we should talk on briefly is that to your point, you've now given me the floor to do the same thing that you did. Is like, I can almost assure you that if you have a CNC fire, 90% of the time, it is not the machine's fault that the fire happened. No. Like, even though people want to believe the machine started my shop on fire, like, no. It's not. The reason is you did something wrong. And the number one culprit of fires on a CNC machine is the wrong bit doing the wrong task. That's and it is generally
speed.
Yeah, and it's and a lot of times the one that really gets me is people who drill with compression bits.
Yes.
God, you absolutely cannot drill with a compression bit.
Ever. Router tools in general. Right? Yeah. Even up shears, even if chip evacuation is good.
Right.
Buy the drills, especially in the cabinet world that I'm cut from, right? We have very specific hole sizes. We do a 3mm pilot hole. If maybe you do 5mm shelf holes, you got an 8 and a 35 for hinge holes. You've got 10 for adjustable feet, whatever. Yeah. Buy them. Right? You do not have a router bit trying to hollow out every single one of those.
Right.
Not to mention, you just burn up those tools. They get hot. There's a fire hazard going on there. But router tools are expensive compared to drills. Right. Drills are relatively inexpensive, right? And they last forever.
Right.
And that's back to your point about either having 15 tools or having a drill block, right? Is you need a place for multiple drills to go if you're in the cabinet world, right? They do take up tool spots. And so, we do get a lot of, unfortunately, drilling with our tools. Yeah. And we see the aftermath of that, and it's not pretty. And so that's another, like, cabinet software will do that if you don't have the right tools in there, right? All they see is a hole on a part.
Correct.
If the drill isn't there, they say, oh, well, this router bit can just haul it. Like, so just be very cognizant of what you're doing.
And that's where education comes in. That's why, for us, this is why lifetime support is so important. And there's people that don't see the value in it right away, and they're thinking, I can go buy a machine for 25% less from China. And we are so adamant about, you're getting less for your money. It's not just that you're saving 25%. You are spending less money because you're getting less. Like with us, it's about education. It's about being there to make sure we tell you, don't drill with, your compression bit. Make sure you're using a brad point or,
I do want to caveat that by a little bit, because I can hear some people screaming right now that are listening to this is, let's say you are, trying to make a 2-inch hole, let's say, right?
Right.
If you can program a tool to be moving while it ramps in, and the diameter of the hole you're trying to make is considerably larger than the tool, sure, you can certainly hollow out, as long as the tool is moving. What we're getting at is, I need a 1/2-inch hole. I have a 1/2-inch compression bit. Plunge, no bueno.
Correct.
Right? That's what we're trying to.
I'm glad you said that, because exactly. If you can add a ramp in, you're using the bit the way it's intended, moving forward. It's
engaging
using
material, cutting. Like it's the plunging in and not moving thing. That is,
it's literally an automated fire starter. It's literally what you've created. Like, if anybody's ever seen the old caveman videos where they got the 2 sticks and they're whittling away, that's what you're doing.
And the only difference between that video and real life is it happens in a split second. They get hot so fast.
Correct.
And
so just being safe is the right thing. And if you ever question it, call. Like, that's the one thing. That's why we give lifetime tech support. I would rather you call us so we can give you our advice. And I know, Nick, you're the same way. You'd rather them reach out, ask the question, versus just assuming, because I know it's overused in the world and people don't believe it, but there's no dumb question is real. Like, I would rather you call me 10 times a day to be safe than to not call me because you're embarrassed to call me 100%. And then have a problem. So just call us. Like, we're here to help out. It's why we work with partners like Nick. Really, success for us is the sum of small things, working together. And for us, talking about the success that we've had together, Nick, over the years, you and I have worked a lot together, and we have, I feel like, really helped a lot of people do a lot of cool things.
Absolutely.
And we have no intention of slowing down. Both of us are,
Amen.
Both of us are sitting here going, what can we do next? And that's why we had this conversation today, is that, we wanted to have you on the show, and you and I talked about it. Like, we got to get this conversation out there. Let's talk about AWFS real quick, right? It's approaching. We're talking about AWFS. It's in Las Vegas this year. AWFS Las Vegas in July. So we're not that far away. It starts off July 23rd, right? No, July 22nd is when it kicks off. You're going to be at the booth, though, July 23rd.
That's right, on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon. So from 1 to 4 is what we've kind of come up with. You're going to be hanging out at the ShopSabre booth. The booth number is 2323, so should be pretty easy to remember. Just think of the ShopSabre 23, and then you can say 2323.
There you go.
And we'll be there from 1 to 4 with Nick. And Nick's going to just be there to answer your tooling questions.
Chat about anything.
There's no real, we're not going to be doing anything specific other than having some of his tools on hand for him to show off. Are you going to be bringing the blanks of the good, better, best?
Sure.
There we go.
Happy to do that.
So if you want to see those carbide blank differences, he has them here to show you. There's a good, better, best. Again, to his point, they only build best, right? That's what I love about it.
That was our plan.
Yeah. And we didn't talk on it real quick, but I want to open the forum up about, you talked about coding. You've mentioned it a few times, but let's talk about what that means.
I appreciate So in addition to carbide hardness, one of the things you'll see with our tooling is we have our black diamond coating. What the coating is it's a play on diamond-like carbon. Basically, it's a coating process that mimics the structure of real diamond. It is not real diamond. It mimics the hardness, but most importantly to us in routing is it decreases the friction on the tool, which goes back to our heat generation comment, right? And so we chose, again, to offer the best possible. We test uncoated and coated tools, and if all of the variables are right, coatings absolutely make a life improvement more than the cost of the coating. And so to us, we made the decision we were not going to offer an uncoated tool. This is what we have shown in our testing to be the absolute best bang for your buck. And so typically, if I'm with a new customer and they say, we tried coated tools and we didn't see a difference, the first thing I think is, what variable isn't right.
Right.
Because coatings aren't magic, right? They don't save you from wrong RPM or wrong feed rate.
Right.
You can't just plug it in and expect it to go well.
Yep.
But if everything else is right, and then you add a coating on top of it, you do see a life improvement in the tooling. And so I think that's the biggest thing with coatings is reduction in friction, but it has to go along with everything else being right too, right?
Yep.
Kind of the theme of the day, right?
Yep.
Everything has to be dialed there.
And that's why I wanted to at least touch on that, because people hear about this black diamond coating and it's like, it's not diamonds. That's what I wanted to say. Like I've had people say that to me. Well, it's black diamond. Like that's the coating's name.
It is the coating's name.
Its actual composition.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. It is a process. It's our play on a process called DLC, diamond-like carbon.
Yep. So no, it's awesome. I can say definitively we use them here. We have used your tools in some of our videos, and we've had tremendous results with it. I know Sean, who a lot of you know, CNC Sean, he runs frost tooling in his own shop.
Yes, he does.
And he's brought tools in when he's done some of the videos you guys have checked out. And, I know now you've expanded a little bit. You're starting to move into, some MDF door stuff recently, right?
Yep. So we've got a lineup of MDF door tooling now. Yep. And again, to kind of go along with this, not being good, better, best, I mean, best only, we basically chose to skip past like carbide insert style tools and go straight to PCD, real diamond tools. So for those watching on video, I have one of our 40 millimeter pocketing tools here for, making shaker MDF doors. And we have a lot of users of that tool. They last for freaking ever, thousands and thousands of doors, assuming everything, is set up right. And the sanding time difference between real diamond tooling and carbide tooling, whether it's great carbide tooling or not, it's just night and day sanding difference. And so if you're spending, 5-6 minutes sanding doors and you can get that down to 2, I mean, it doesn't take long for that money to come back.
Not
to mention sanding sucks, right? So it's like one of those things.
Nobody enjoys it.
Right? Yeah.
So you got Nick, you look like you want to jump in.
Yeah, I wanted to get a word in here first.
Yeah.
So earlier when
we forgot you were here.
When you were telling your story about, you wanted to have not just the normal tool, you wanted to be above everybody else, right? And be better. I feel like you may have already answered this question that's been in my head, but you talked about the 3, 6, and 10 carbide, right? And how much of a difference that makes. And now you talked about the diamond coating making a difference. Is there anything else like that went into your tooling process, or when you create, besides those two things, that makes it in your mind above?
I mean, there is one thing with our geometry that I can't really, I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I respect that.
But if you look at our tooling and the way that it's designed and the clearance we have behind the flutes, anyone who's in the grind world will notice that they don't quite look like everything else.
Right.
So yeah, there is something to that, but it's the one, as public as we are with literally everything, it's the one thing we hold close.
Hey, you know what? We all have those things as companies.
We do.
And you have to respect that, because let's be honest, we all get into business, with our own goals as well, right? And some of the goals is to be better than everybody else. And when you find something that works, sometimes that's your trade secret, and it's okay. And I'm sure many of you listeners are aware that you guys built, 10 different cabinet sets, and there's those tricks.
Yeah. And the reality is any tool company, if they look at this tool, they could recreate this tool. Right?
Absolutely.
They're all talented people. Like, it's not like if I say this, they're going to immediately know they know what we're doing. Right. Just like we know.
Our job isn't to make it easier.
Tool, we know how it got ground. We know the ins and outs. It's, we all have our own little special twist on geometry, but at the end of the day, most geometries are very good.
Right.
So it comes down to carbide hardness, coatings, and all the other 10 variables.
Correct. It's making the cake. It's every variable in there makes the cake. Right. And
I did want to say one more thing. I know we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, or I think I casually mentioned 2 flutes versus 3.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get that out there before we're done. But
no, that's for sure.
I've got tools here for those on the video. Basically, the exact tool in a 2 flute and in a 3 flute. And we have a lot of 3 flute buyers that very quickly become 2 flute buyers.
Right.
And it goes back to the early user thinking just more is better. Right? They look at a 2 flute tool and a 3 flute tool and they just, 3 has to be better. Right.
Yeah.
The reality is that when you go from 2 flutes to 3 flutes, if you don't change anything else, you have to run 50% faster feed rate to achieve the same chip load, same heat mitigation, same cut, everything.
Yep.
Right. That's a lot.
Right.
If you're running at, we'll make the math easy, at 600 inches a minute, right? That's 900 inches a minute.
Right.
I mean, that's cruising.
Right.
Right. and I don't care what machine you have. Like when we're approaching 1,000 and above, like you're cooking. And so, but most people aren't doing that, nor do they have the machines to be able to do that, right? And so they're running it at 2 flute speeds, and all that's happening is the tools are getting so hot. There's so much friction, the tool is not engaging like it should, and they break. And so we get a lot of that is like, we tried this and they broke, and then we'll realize they're running a 3 flute too slow. We'll get them into a 2 flute, and they'll say something like, but our machine can run that fast. And I say, but yes, but do you actually need it, right? Because there's so many more thoughts that go into it. So I always put the brakes on. Oh, I'll just jack up the feed rate and go for it, right?
Can and should are two different things, you know?
And so I would say, I haven't looked up the metrics super recently, but a couple months ago, we were basically selling about 90% 2 flute tooling. Right. And that's the way it should be, honestly.
I agree with that.
Even shops that have, 4, 5, 6 routers, there's just so much diminishing return, and there's so much. It's such a specialized company to make a 3 flute be actually the right tool. They exist, of course,
for sure.
But
that's something that I love, and we'll finish kind of on that note. Is that I think from a end user standpoint, sometimes people get so caught up in speed that they lose track of the real focus of these machines and really what you're trying to accomplish, because you hear people all the time, like they feel like every second counts. And in business, every second does count in some regard. But like, if your machine is sitting idle for 8 hours a week versus 8 hours and 12 minutes, does that truly change your profitability from an organization? And I would argue in most cases, no.
In most cases, no.
Yeah. Like, I mean, my brother used to say it all the time when, you get people that push, like, I can't go fast enough. Like, do you take a lunch break every day? And if they say yes, then you're not using every second of your day to the point where it matters. You know what I'm saying? Like, until you're at that point where literally you're skipping lunch, you're working late, you're coming in early, and you still can't get the work done, then seconds count. But like for the vast majority of our operators, the bottleneck isn't on the machine. The bottleneck is somewhere else in your business, whether it's finishing, installing, doing something else, the programming time that's taking you to do things. Like your bottleneck is elsewhere. It's a lot of times not the actual machine's performance time.
That's right. Very few shops are waiting on a router.
Correct.
Right? It's somewhere else downstream.
Correct.
That's the bottleneck.
Right.
And if you're waiting on a router, generally speaking, going to a 3 flute isn't going to change that. Right. It's like you're gaining like 10, 15 seconds a nest, right? It's like, it's not this like glorious change. So if you're waiting on a router, you might need another router.
Right, correct. And that's what I was going to say, is a lot of times for people, it's adding another router is actually a financial decision that is hard to really consider, because they don't really realize that you're at that point where having more than one router is necessary. And a lot of shops, even if you're not running the router all day, every day, when you are running it, you might have a demand for 2 routers still, because your jobs are big enough that 2 routers still is more profitable for you than to run all day long. And so for a lot of people, I think that's where their consideration of as they upgrade and you look is sometimes you do need to look at the next level of router. You're running as to your point earlier, I'm just going to throw a number out, $1,000 machine. And it's like, yeah, your $1,000 machine got you where you're at, but you're beyond that machine at this point. It's time to go to that next level. And, guys on table saws and, I still kind of like, I can't believe it exists still, but there's so many shops that don't even have a CNC router.
So many.
And I'm like, you're just throwing profitability out the window because the amount of time you could save to do that is night and day different. And adding tools like this to a machine like ours changes people's ROI incredible without having to run all day, every day.
Yes. And I'll say, take our tooling out of it. If you are still a table saw shop, you're already 5 years past when you should have done it.
Right.
It's time, right? It's tooling out of it, like CNC machining in general in the cabinetry world. I don't care how big you are. You're already late if you're not there.
Right.
It's time. And, I've been able to help thousands. You've helped thousands. Like, how many people have you heard from that said, I wish I would have never bought this router?
Right.
Like zero?
It doesn't, it doesn't happen.
I've never heard it.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Right. No, nobody would give them back.
Yeah.
If that's true, join the party.
Right. That 100%. And that's exactly it. Is like, you just think about where you're at today. And my favorite one I always like to finish with is that people are always like, well, Grandpa started this company building it by hand. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if Grandpa could have bought a router, he would have.
He would have. Yep. And that homeowner doesn't open their cabinets and say to their friends, hey, a guy built this on a tape. They don't care what the box came from, right? They care that it looks good on the outside. The construction's good. We're past that stuff.
Correct.
We need to be past that stuff.
I agree 100% with you there. So, no, Nick, I appreciate you coming in today. It's
awesome.
obviously there's a lot with this industry, and there's a lot more with this industry. We're touching the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to have you back on a future show because I think there's more to talk about. And as business evolves, I think there's going to be more products to even chat about. But, I think at AWFS, if you're going to be in the area of Las Vegas and you're coming to visit us, make sure you stop by, see Nick. If you got tooling questions, even if, hell, you're not a ShopSabre customer, you already own somebody else's equipment, but you got a tooling question, 1 to 4 on Wednesday, he's there. That's something he's happy to chat with you about. Even if you're not buying a router, we want you to feel like you have connection to people in the industry that make a difference. And really, that's what Nick is.
And cabinetry questions, CNC machining in general, wide open book.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like I said, we're there to basically help you make the right decision because our goal is to help you be more successful. And both of us teaming up is part of that. So,
amen.
With that, obviously I'm going to move into our motivational quote of the week because I do have one here this week for you. If you take out the team and teamwork, it just becomes work. And who wants to do that? So that's my motivational quote of the week is because as a team, and especially in this world, obviously tooling companies and CNC companies, people often, what are you doing over there, Nick?
Not really sure what happened.
Falling apart, man.
Falling apart, man. Come on, get your stuff together. We're often pinned against each other, right? It's like tooling is the tool's right, the machine's wrong, or the machine's right and the tool's bad. Like we work in conjunction with each other, and it's teamwork. Like a lot of times, rather than trying to pin one versus the other, just get us to work. Hey, this is the tool I'm running. This is what Nick has told us. Okay, cool. This is what we're seeing. Or hey, you know what? Why don't I call Nick? Nick, how many times have I called you and just said, hey, having an issue here? What's your suggestion? And then you're like, oh, actually, we got to slow it down. Or hey, we got to speed that up. And a lot of times you'll find, even in your business, and let's take tooling and CNC out of the equation, but everything in your business has some form of teamwork. Whether it's a one-person shop, you're still working with somebody, whether it's your material supplier, your customers, your delivery guy, your UPS guy. Like teamwork is a part of life that I think the more we embrace each other and realize that we all have our needs, but if we work together, we accomplish way more together. And that's 100%. Really what this is about for me, is that if you take out the team in teamwork, it becomes truly work, because working against people is terrible and nobody has time for more work. Nobody wants to do work. We all come to work because we want to do something that, we have a means to the end, right? Like work is necessary evil, unfortunately. I think we all wish we could stay home and do nothing all day long, but I would get too bored. I know that. And it's truly enjoyable doing what we do. So, Nick, did I miss anything? I should say Nick's. Did I miss anything?
Well, the only thing I was kind of disappointed about is you started talking about coming to see Nick in Vegas, and then I realized there was another guy you were talking about, and it wasn't me.
Yeah, sorry, dude. You're not coming to Vegas. Sorry, man. Sorry. Maybe next year.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next
year. Now that I have all this knowledge to share.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe we should.
What would be better than two Nicks talking about bits and machines and
I got a better idea.
And diamonds, and
we're gonna set up Nick 1 and Nick 2, and then I want people to go up and ask the same question to both of you.
See how it goes.
And we'll record it. I just want to see the answers side by side.
That would be great, actually.
It would be like the real answer, and then there would just be some made up weather story.
Of course, that bit is coated in 4 carats of diamonds.
It'd be like, what does a velocity tool mean? Well, it's obviously a tornado.
It means it goes really fast.
But no, in all seriousness, like I said, happy to have you on the show this week, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Again, if you guys have any questions, head out to his website. Go ahead, plug it one more time for us.
frostcnctooling.com.
So, and I'm sure our video guys are talented enough, they'll put something here or there or somewhere.
That'd be great.
That way you can go out there, check it out. If you want to purchase tools, we do actually have some kits here on hand. So you can purchase them from our parts department or on our website. You can go to shopsabre.com. We have lots of links there, in which we have some new packages we're actually promoting now as well that are just more thought out for the cabinetry industry.
Yep.
And
wood, cabinetry and wood in general. We've got a small kit that we put together that we thought would be a good starting point.
And the cool thing about that is a lot of people don't realize how affordable this tooling is. Like truly, you're hearing all these things and immediately you're like, black diamond coating. Oh my God, it's the hardness. It's too expensive. I'll tell you right now, it's probably cheaper than most of the tools you're buying. And I will say that. Go check it out. Get to our website. It's listed there. But with that, thanks for tuning in to Talkin Shop with ShopSabre. I am Brandon.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Nick.
We'll catch you next time. Keep talking shop.